I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside, it's so comfortable, and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off road. The guy managed the group. He was like, "What are you doing in this beautiful car?" I'm like, "I'm going off road." He's like, "Are you sure? Because you can use one of ours." And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, no, we're going to do this. And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability as well as its robust interior are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
These days, we're all investors, trying to be smart with our money despite our worst impulses. But at iShares, we believe that deep down inside of every investor is a better investor. One that's just waiting to be let out. Explore iShares ETFs and insights and let your best investor out. Visit iShares.com for more information.
John Morrow on today. Now, if you don't know him, he's a fascinating guy. He's made millions of dollars writing, and he's helped thousands and thousands of other people make a living from writing. And he talks about that. But what's also, I hate to say it, interesting about John, but he has been paralyzed from the neck down since he was born. And he's really such an inspiration to so many people. And, you know, he's a great success, and he talks about that. I've known him for a long time, for about, gosh, I guess 8 or 9 years now. And just always a pleasure to have him on the podcast. We talk about everything from what's going on with the medical industry in the US to how to make a living writing to what's going to be the effect of AI on not only writing, but every industry. So, and that was fascinating. It was towards the end. It was fascinating discussion. So big thanks to John Morrow. You can find him on smartblogger.com. And also you can listen to him right now.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show.
So we're going to talk to John Morrow about lots of things, particularly how to make a living as a writer in these difficult times. But John just informed me he's moving from Austin to Monterrey, Mexico, because apparently, John, what was the statistic you just said?
I've seen stats that 60% of people who used to work in healthcare are not returning after COVID.
So like 60% of nurses, for instance, are just gone now.
Yeah, and that's not just nurses. So there are all of these different classifications of people in healthcare. There are registered nurses, there are licensed vocational nurses, there are certified nursing assistants, there are medical assistants. So you're losing a huge collection of all of those that just aren't going back or don't intend to.
And where did they go?
A lot of them are starting other careers where they can work from home.
I mean, I know you talk about you could write from home. This is going to be the topic of this podcast. So
Yeah.
what else are these healthcare people doing from home? And didn't they get into nursing because they loved healthcare?
What I hear from most nurses is, I really love helping people. I love helping with medical issues, all of those things. But they really, really dislike the medical system and the way everything went down during COVID.
Yeah.
And they just don't want to repeat it. A lot of people got burned out trying to help. And then the American healthcare system has also just become very litigious. There's a lot of documentation. So you'll have nurses who will spend half of their day, sometimes more, filling out paperwork rather than working with patients. And that's usually not what they went to school for.
And what kind of careers do you find that they're moving into? Is there one or two in particular, or are they just completely going to different industries?
I haven't seen any research on that. I don't know. The only evidence I would have would be anecdotal, but I mean, to some extent, they're trying to get some jobs working remotely as nurses. So with insurance companies, although the ones who I've talked to who do that are also not very happy, but they get to work from home. Some are moving into entirely different careers and going back to school.
Do you think, is there such a thing as like concierge nursing, where it's like kind of their nurse for hire, but independent of the medical system?
There is, to a degree. I mean, I'm on the higher end of that system.
Mm-hmm.
I pay, in the US, I pay 150 to 200 grand a year for nursing services out of my own pocket. Insurance covers nothing.
Oh, you're kidding me. Why does insurance cover nothing? Nothing. What do they expect you to do?
So insurance, all insurance carriers, except for Medicaid, this doesn't even include Medicare in the US, but all insurance carriers do not cover any sort of long-term care. So if you have an illness with an indefinite time horizon where you need care, their solution, they will pay for a nursing home. So if you want to go to a nursing home, they will pay for that, but they will not pay for home care.
And so you're going to Monterey to find nurses. Why are there nurses there?
Because there's a surplus of nurses in Mexico.
Really?
So Monterey is only about a 7-hour drive from Austin. And I did an experiment. So when I post an ad to hire here in the US, before COVID, I would get maybe 50 applicants a week. Now I'm down to maybe 10 from the same hiring systems. When I posted an ad in Monterey, I got over 200 qualified applicants in 24 hours.
Oh my gosh. And why is there such a surplus there, just 7 hours away?
Some of it is cultural. The Mexican culture really, I think, places a higher value on caring for people. Another part of it is that a lot of being a nurse, there is more hands-on. It's not as much paperwork because unless you're in the Mexican government insurance program, I think it's called IMSS, everything is private pay. So there isn't like a lot of the paperwork. People are not as litigious. There are even laws against suing doctors in some cases. So because of that, I think you just have a much greater population of people looking to do that kind of work. And then when someone like me comes in, I can hire a registered nurse there for about $800 a month is the salary. This is someone with a 4-year degree who's worked in the hospital. And that's basically, I took the highest wage in the city and I added like $100 a month to it.
And you've been through this before. I mean, when you were first starting to make money, writing and blogging and so on, I remember you moved to Mexico for a while. You were telling me this before, how, because you couldn't get the right, you weren't allowed to make money in the US, basically.
So it's ironic and funny. It's like a repeat of my life that I've tried everything there is to solve this problem. I've talked to house managers of billionaires. I've interviewed people who run agencies. I've talked to nannying companies to see if I could somehow entice nannies into doing things. And in the US, honestly, if anyone had found a solution, it would have been me. I probably get the best care there is for someone with my condition. And I also have a lot of money to throw at the problem, where a lot of people don't. And even with all of the money to throw at the problem, basically you could have an unlimited check. I could be offering $1 million a year for nurses. It wouldn't totally solve the problem. It wouldn't totally solve the problem just because there's such a shortage.
And let's say you need emergency care in Mexico, you'll be able to find that no problem.
Yeah. So the beautiful part about Monterrey has probably the best healthcare in all of Mexico. Most people aren't aware because it's not a tourist destination. I mean, I think it's over 5 million people. It's a huge city. I mean, maybe not compared to like New York or LA, but it's bigger than Austin. And they have world-class healthcare there. Now, also, it's only a 3-hour drive to the border, and you can get a helicopter insurance policy for about $500, where if your physician says you need to be flown to the US for emergency medical care, they'll just put you on a helicopter and take you to Texas.
Wow. So how long do you think you'll stay in Monterrey?
So my plan is to actually hire nurses. There is a way, there's a loophole in the law that I've already used once. I have one Mexican nurse now who works for me off and on in the US. And if you get them classified as domestic servants and you have your full-time residence in Mexico, then you can get them a visa to be able to travel freely with you.
Oh,
So
wow.
my plan is to go down there, hire all of my nurses. They'll have to be employed for 6 months. I'll maintain a permanent residence there. And then after 6 months, they'll be able to travel back and forth to the US however much I want.
Oh, well, that sounds really good, John. And just to refresh my memory, like when you first went to Mexico, why weren't you allowed to make money here in order to get, like you were making too much money to get medical care, I guess. Like what
Yeah.
was the actual law? I'm not really familiar.
So, like I said earlier, Medicaid is the only insurance carrier, and that's government insurance for the impoverished, basically. You can only get it if you're living below the poverty line. Obamacare raised that a little bit in some states, but Medicaid has income limits. And at the time, it was $800 a month.
That's how much you were allowed to make.
That's how much I was allowed to make. Now, this is like 12 years ago now. So I'm sure it's a little bit higher now, but that's how much I was allowed to make. Anything above that, in the state I was in, which was North Carolina, I had to spend on healthcare. So basically, if I made $5,000, I'd have to spend $4,200 on healthcare. If I didn't, I would immediately lose all benefits.
Oh my gosh. Well, I guess it's another topic completely, but I wish there was a solution. But obviously, a lot of smart people have thought about a solution, and who knows your solution is going to work the best, which is just leave the country and go to Monterrey. It sounds great, and hopefully, you're in 6 months you'll be able to go back and forth pretty smoothly.
Yeah, I mean, so that's the plan. I'm really disappointed. I'm a pretty stubborn person when it comes to solving problems, but that particular one I just couldn't solve here. And so, I mean, I think the big lesson for anyone who may be in a similar boat is sometimes you find good answers outside your own country. And if you can be mobile enough to be able to kind of switch countries for different benefits, that's an amazing thing to be able to do.
Yeah, and John, look, you've built up a great career. It's been fortunate that you're able to be so literally mobile and have flexibility in your medical care. And it's a shame so many other people, because of the system or whatever, don't have the opportunities you have with that. But let's talk about your career, because I read your blogs. They're always great. I've been reading them for years. You write about my favorite topic of all, which is writing. In particular, how other people can make a living as a writer. And you started off as a blogger when people were making, I would say people were making more money as a blogger and an article writer, freelance article writer, 20 years ago, or 10 years ago even. But I feel like lately content is more free now, and it's harder to get gigs as a writer. Would you say it is now? I mean, your current blogs would suggest that it's more possible than ever now to make money as a writer. How would one go about it, basically?
So the writing market has changed a lot over the past 20 years. I mean, it used to be, let's go even further back. It used to be that no one could start their own blog, their own website. You had to write for someone else's publication, right? You had to write for newspapers or magazines.
You had to be chosen by someone.
Exactly. And then we moved into this era to where you could start your own blog. You could write on different platforms. You could build up your own following. And that was a big change. But the other big change that went along with that is that businesses started figuring out, okay, if we publish content, then we will be able to attract people to us rather than having to pay for ads. And so the whole content marketing industry grew up, which includes more than just written text. But in general, the content marketing industry, which is businesses, spend about 3 times more on writers than all of the magazines and newspapers in the world combined.
Wow, I did not know that. So, for instance, like you take Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Newsweek, Time Magazine, whatever, Sports Illustrated, combine all that together, and companies like, I don't know, Procter and Gamble, Exxon, Pepsi Cola, these companies, or smaller companies, I don't know, you'll have to tell me, they pay more to writers.
Yeah, it's a mix of companies, or the other thing that's really, really common, a lot of larger companies especially work with agencies. So most of our students now at SmartBlogger will typically start the career working with an agency, and agencies are virtually hiring all the time.
And what do they hire for? Like, what's a typical gig look like?
So different agencies specialize in different things, but so there are 2 broad categories of content. There's search-driven content, which is Google. Okay, I want my website to show up on Google. Therefore, I'm going to write content that caters to Google. Or your other option is to go after social, which is LinkedIn, Instagram, to some extent YouTube. Although YouTube's an interesting hybrid between the two. And so typically what you'll have is agencies either focusing on search or on social. The majority of the writing jobs are in search. I'd say about 80%.
Well, what does that mean? So, like, let's say I'm a company and I need the word out on my company. First off, am I a Fortune 100 company? Am I a small or medium business? Like, what kind of company am I that I'm most interested in this?
The majority of people who spend significantly on content marketing it begins to start around revenue between 5 to 10 million a year.
Okay.
So these are not tiny businesses. But it's not always a Fortune 500 company, right? So it's anywhere from 5 to 10 million a year up to billions of dollars a year.
And the reason I need search-related content, I need articles that are going to be good enough that other people link to them so they rise up on search engines. Is that how it works? Like, I'm always naive about SEO. It used to be SEO was like, oh, you got to put in the right meta tags and have the right title.
Yeah.
But I always tell people, don't worry about any of that. Just write a good article. Everybody will link to it, and that's how it'll rise up on Google. But maybe I'm being naive.
It's a good general advice. I mean, Google's algorithm, if you break it down, what has never really changed is that they're looking for the best content linked to by the most influential people.
Right.
Those two components, best content linked to by the most influential people, are the two things that have never really changed about search. Now, the way they define best content has changed. The way they define the most influential people, that changes. But the core components never really change. So if you're writing really, really good content and other influential people are talking about you, you're in a good starting place, at least.
So let's say I'm a young person. I like writing. I want to do writing. I want to work from home. I don't want to necessarily have a standard boss, a standard job. What first steps can I take to start a career in writing? What can I expect? How long will it take me to make a living? What kind of can I make real wealth out of it? I mean, you've made real wealth out of writing. What's the path?
The first big decision that you have to make is what kind of writing do you want to focus on? The two big types are content writing and copywriting. Content writing is where you are creating content to bring in visitors to a website. Copywriting is where you are convincing those visitors to do something. Sometimes it's buy a product, sometimes it's sign up to an email list, any number of things. But you're influencing them to take an action. So those are the two broad categories. On really sophisticated teams, you'll find those two different specialties working together very often on the same team. So that's your first decision. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So then from there, once you've chosen one of those paths, then you really want to focus on building the skills necessary to get the results companies are looking for. So that's a really dense statement. I can break it down. In content, what businesses are looking for is traffic, is visitors. So if you go to a job interview with a portfolio of stuff you published in magazines, they don't really care that much. But on the other hand, if you go to a job interview and say, go Google freelance writing jobs, I'm on page 1. I know how to rank. I can prove it. You can go Google these terms and see what I'm doing. Those kinds of people get hired instantly.
Hmm.
On the copywriting side, it's measuring the amount of money typically that you made your client. And a good copywriter will be able to tell you, with this campaign we worked on, made this client $100,000. My fee was $5,000. Would you be willing to make a trade like that? And of course, the answer is yes.
Right. And so just to distinguish a little bit more, so like, let's say someone has the Blue Zone diet plan and they have it on their website. They want to sell it to people for $39.99. They hire a copywriter who creates the landing page essentially, and also writes the emails to an email list that go out, and it's designed. It's not necessarily designed to tell a story, so it's not like the arc of the hero, but it's designed to convert people into customers, to give the information that's needed, to express the urgency that's needed, to express how this solution is special and unique, and so on. Whereas a content writer might be like, for Delta Airlines, I traveled for 100 straight hours on Delta planes, and this was my experience. So that might be like content writing.
Yeah, exactly. And for your blue diet pill, I mean, it might be, I lost 40 pounds in 4 days while eating loads of chocolate cake. Here's how. I mean, whatever.
I mean, there are some ethical standards that copywriters are held to, but we get it.
Having those two work together, ultimately, that's how businesses make tons of money, is by having those two different components. So the content writers who are most in demand are typically really good at showing traffic stats. If you're a beginner, you're coming out of college, you're looking for jobs, you don't have any of that proof. So really the big question becomes, how do I become that person who has all of that proof? Right? And the answer is kind of a couple of different things. First of all, you really have to know what you're doing. You can't fake it. You actually have to know what you're doing. And typically, you're not going to know what you're doing just by reading a few articles on Neil Patel's website or whatever website about SEO. That's typically not enough. To really know what you're doing, what I'm talking about is skill. So, for example, people who are really good at ranking on Google, they've written hundreds of headlines. They know what a content brief is.
What's a content brief?
Yeah, so a content brief is a one-page summary of everything that needs to go into the article to make it rank. All right. So this is one reason, by the way, that agencies employ most writers, is because if you go to your average business and you start talking about content briefs, they ask the same question. What's a content brief? They have no idea. A content brief, though, is really actually essential. I can almost predict the success of a content team based on the quality of their content briefs.
Really? So give me an example. Let's say I'm writing about, I don't know, make up any topic you want. And what would the content brief, how would I know what needs to go into that article to rank well on Google?
The most important part of it these days is actually the strategist. In some cases, this person is called a content strategist. In some cases, they're called an editor. Would actually tell you not only here are the keywords, but they would actually give you the outline, and they would give you the competing posts. So here are the 3 posts that we want to outrank on Google. Here are the terms. Here's the outline for the post that we believe will outrank them. And here are my thoughts on how to beat those 3 competitors. So the writer is receiving all of that information before they actually start writing.
Wow. So what's an even more specific example? Am I writing about a celebrity, or am I writing about, since I'm competing with other articles, am I writing about trending topics or?
Often, so this is where you get into the question of search engine strategy. So one of the most important questions that any successful company has to answer is, what keywords do we want to rank for? For some companies, that is, for your diet pill example, that may be how to lose weight, or it may be diet pills. So how to lose weight would be what we call informational intent. It's people are looking for information around this problem. Diet pills, or best places to buy diet pills, that would be a commercial intent. So typically those keywords have even more competition and they're harder to rank for, but they also have higher value. Someone's much more ready to buy if they're searching for diet pills versus how to lose weight. So you have to come up with the whole strategy. And so really what a modern successful content team looks like is you'll have a content strategist who is managing anywhere from 5 to 100 freelance writers and is basically doing all of that analysis and writing the content briefs. And that's their main job.
You know what I love about fantasy sports is that even though I'm not going to be a great basketball player or a baseball player or a football player or whatever, I feel like I get to participate and make decisions and use my knowledge of these different leagues or these different sports to compete. So it's like I can pick my team or I can pick my favorite players, and I could use my knowledge to make predictions and maybe even make money. So with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League on Prize Picks. This is a league created specifically for combo projections that include 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. Want to play alongside some of PrizePicks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz, who's also been a guest on this podcast, and I've been a guest on his? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries for some of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community each week. Look, PrizePicks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. What? So I love playing it. I love anywhere where I can use analytical ability with my interests to demonstrate some skill and maybe make some money. And I like the game-like aspect. I do wish they had chess as a category on prizepicks.com, but I'll settle for what they've got. Maybe I should make my own fantasy chess league. But in any case, I love PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/James. Use code James for a first deposit match up to $100. That's the easiest $100 you're ever going to make. So that's prizepicks.com/James and use code James. Daily fantasy sports made easy. The future of learning is definitely online. Like, it's such BS that you have to spend $200,000 or take $200,000 in loans and go to some fancy school when it's useless. It doesn't guarantee you a job. Most employers, including me, do not care about degrees or grades or anything like that. We want to care that you love what you're doing, that you know what you're doing, in some cases that you have experience or that you're willing to learn. But people in general love learning and are curious. Like, the key to success is curiosity. And I think masterclass.com is the perfect model for online learning. I'm really happy they're sponsoring this episode. If you're going to give a gift, give the gift of learning. Masterclass makes a meaningful gift this season for you and anyone on your list, because both of you can learn from the best to become your best, from leadership to effective communication to cooking. Let me tell you some of the classes I've taken. I've taken comedy from Steve Martin. I mean, can you believe I can take a class from Steve Martin on comedy, or Judd Apatow, my favorite comedy director? I could take an actual class from him on writing. Wolfgang Puck on cooking. Dan Brown on writing, or Judy Bloom, who's been on this podcast, on writing. By the way, Wolfgang Puck also has been on this podcast. It's such a pleasure. I try to take classes all the time from masterclass.com. And whether you're watching Masterclass on TV or listening in audio mode in the app or on their site, the quality speaks for itself. It's like these Masterclass instructors are your own personal mentors that are going to help you reach the next level. How much would it cost to take one-on-one classes on comedy from Steve Martin or on chess from Gary Kasparov? You just wouldn't be able to do it. But it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. With a Masterclass annual membership, it's $10 a month. Memberships start at $120 a year for unlimited access to one-on-one classes with all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. So it's not just $120 for one instructor. You get all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. Boost your confidence and find practical takeaways you can apply to your life and at work. And if you own a business or are a team leader, use Masterclass to empower and create future-ready employees and leaders. That's the real education in today's world. So this holiday season, you can give one annual membership and get one free at masterclass.com/JAS. JAS, of course, stands for the James Altucher Show. So right now you can get two memberships for the price of one at masterclass.com/JAS. Masterclass.com/JAS. Offer terms apply. Like, okay, let's say I'm a freelance writer and I contact one of these agencies, and we'll talk about which ones in a second, but I contact one of these agencies and they hire me. Let's say it's a small, medium business, 5 to 10 million in revenues, that's hiring them, the agency. What's a typical gig? Like, what's an example gig that someone has done?
Yeah, so a typical starting gig is they'll just pay you to write one article.
About
And
what? Like, what's like an example?
it could be For example, let's say they have a client who is selling diet pills. They may assign you to write an article about probably some sort of long tail topic. Long tail means like very specific and not a whole lot of search traffic. So they would say something like the best diet pills for people with diabetes, for example. And they would give you a content brief and they would say, you have 2 days to write this. Go.
And what's in the content brief? So diabetes is in there.
Yep.
Obviously you have to talk about diets. What else? Do you have to mention specific diets? Do you have to mention, what diet? You have to describe what diabetes is. Like what's in the content brief?
So what a content strategist will do is they will look at the articles that are already ranking for that keyword. And they will, a lot of times, copy and paste those articles into a document and even into AI tools these days is what most content teams do. And the AI will tell them, it'll reverse engineer the algorithm. This is where we're getting into the really advanced stuff. And it'll tell the strategist, here are the terms Google expects you to have in this article. Otherwise, they're unlikely to rank you. And they can see that statistically based on what's already ranking on that page.
And then where do you publish the article? Just on your website, or do you go on Medium? Do you go on LinkedIn?
Most companies do their own website because the beautiful thing about your own website is then you get to have all of your own cookies. You get to have pop-ups. You get to have special offers and sidebars. So your chances of converting the traffic either then or you can follow up with ads because you have cookies on these people now. You can retarget them. Your value per visitor is probably 20x if it's on your website versus any of those other platforms.
What if your site itself doesn't rank high on Google? So for instance, the Wall Street Journal probably automatically is considered influential by Google, but some random business might not be considered influential by Google, and so none of their articles are ranking well.
So a piece of Google's algorithm is what's called domain authority. And domain authority is the authority of your entire website. And so Wall Street Journal, very likely to rank right away for everything. If you're a relatively new business, if you're competing against the Wall Street Journal, it's actually going to be very difficult because they have very high domain authority. Now, it's not the only factor. Another factor is topical authority. So topical authority is, I have lots of articles around this one particular topic. So for example, SmartBlogger on my site now is probably the biggest writing website in the world now. We have a smaller competitor who I'm very familiar with and very friendly with. Her name is Elna Kane. And Elna Kane, for a long time, was outranking us on freelance writing. And it's because she had over 100 different articles on freelance writing, where we only had like 5. Okay. Now, we didn't outrank Elna, even though we had a higher domain authority. We didn't outrank her until we also published 50, 75, 100 articles on freelance writing and raised our topical authority in the eyes of Google. So one answer, if you're competing against a site with a higher domain authority, is to raise your topical authority. So just publish more content around a smaller topic set. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you were ranking high in writing, but this other site was ranking high in freelance writing because they had many more articles specifically about that topic.
Exactly.
And so it's interesting because now it makes me think, like, let's say I'm a dentist or a lawyer. It pays for me to, let's say I'm a divorce lawyer. If I write tons of articles about divorces, that might be a way that I start ranking higher on the topic of divorce. Or let's say I do divorces in Memphis, Tennessee. This is how divorces in Memphis, Tennessee are like. So it's a very specific topic. That might make me rank higher than the other divorce firms in Memphis, Tennessee.
That's exactly right.
And so then they hire agencies who hire writers. And let's say I'm a beginning writer. I want to make a living writing. I'm writing a novel on the side, like every aspiring writer is, but I still need to make a living and pay the rent. What would I do?
So, assuming you know what you're doing, agencies typically pay, a good agency will typically pay about 10 cents a word to start. Okay. So that means to write a 1,000 word article, you're going to get paid about $100. All right. It's not good money. It's not terrible money, but it's not good money. But that's kind of where people get started. From there, once you develop more of a portfolio, agencies will sometimes raise you 15, 20 cents a word. The highest I've seen is maybe 30 cents a word. Okay. So 30 cents a word, same 1,000 word article, you're getting paid $300. All right. It's still not fantastic. So the real money in writing is actually made by the strategist. It's the one putting together those content briefs. A content strategist, typically the agency will hire one of those full time. So a content strategist, just starting out, we're the leading training company in the world now for content strategists.
You guys are SmartBlogger.
Yeah, SmartBlogger's. We have a waiting list for people to hire our students. The average content strategist starts out at 50 to 70 for their first salary. And typically you see the salary increasing by about $10,000 a year. So you can make 6 figures with, 5 to 7 years experience as a content strategist.
So, and I think a lot of writers, I don't know if they want to do, well, I don't know really. You would know more than me what the makeup is of these people, but I would think a lot of writers just want to write articles. Like so they want to write, Delta needs something, Procter & Gamble needs something, this small diet company needs something. And so they would write, I would think that they could do bulk, even if it's 10 cents a word, write 5 articles a day. They're making $500 a day. And that's a pretty good living too.
Yeah, it's not bad. So yeah, you can make a decent living doing that. You can even, if all you want is some side income, I have tons of students. We're talking hundreds and hundreds of students now who have gotten to the point where they make $1,000 to $3,000 a month on the side of their full-time job, just from writing articles. And then if they really enjoy it, maybe then they go full-time and make maybe 5,000 full-time writing articles. It's not impossible. You're really having to hustle and do a lot of writing if you want to make good money, and you have to be fast. So one of the biggest differences, like me when early in my career versus now, and in general, I think it's any writer, you learn to produce really good content really fast. So in the beginning, 1,000 words sounds like a lot. I can write 1,000 publishable words in an hour now. I mean, you probably can too.
Yeah, no, I mean, I started my professional career. I started writing in like the 90s, but I started my being paid for writing in 2002, early 2003. And at first I'd write one article every 2 weeks. And this is for financial publications. I started out writing, but then I was writing, I mean, I got fast, like you say, like that's a skill you learn. And I was writing I could write up to 10 articles a day if I wanted to.
Yeah, you totally can. So I know plenty of writers who do that. And that's a certain type of mentality, mindset too. Now, what I typically see from a lot of our students is, I mean, so just like you said, a lot of writers don't want to be strategists. A lot of writers also don't want to write 10 articles a day.
Yeah.
So then it's, I mean, kind of pick your poison. Which one do you want? A lot of our students, not all of them by any means, but a lot of them do go on to become strategists at some point. And then there are others who just they're happy for instance, the most common one I see is we have a lot of students who are stay-at-home moms, and they're very happy making $2,000 to $3,000 a month, just on the side whenever it fits in their schedule to write those articles.
Like a young person, I mean, when I was young, if I could make $2,000 a month, I would be rich.
Yeah.
So when I was like 20 years old, 22 years old.
So for a phase of your life or particular circumstances, I think it's fine. And if you get in good with 2 to 3 agencies and they respect your work, that's pretty easy to do. We've helped tons of people do it.
And so, okay, so let's say, I have a choice between bartending on the side or writing on the side. I'm like, I have a daughter who's majoring in writing.
Mhm.
She's a good writer. She's never done kind of content writing or copywriting or anything like that, but she's maybe tired of being a waitress on the side, and she'd be interested. I'm thinking she would be interested in writing. I'm going to have her listen to this podcast. We'll see. And what should she do?
It depends on her income and lifestyle goals. So kind of the hierarchy, I kind of laid out the bottom of the hierarchy, but it does go higher. Okay. So above the content strategist, so let's say I have a student who's been a content strategist for 5 years. They come back to me and they say, listen, I've had a pretty good run, but I'm wondering, could I get even bigger opportunities? At that point, typically one of two things happens. Either they start their own agency or they start their own publication, like SmartBlogger, for example. And they basically become a magazine. Most of the magazine style sites these days are started by content strategists from people like agencies.
And so let me ask you a question. Like, they do this because they're very familiar with how to make any article on their website rank highly on Google. So they know all the tools to find all the right words and all the right topics to consistently rank high on Google. And then that attracts either advertisers or clients or affiliates or whatever.
And eventually, so this was the path that I followed. I worked for Brian Clark. I was an editor over at Copyblogger.
I was trying to remember what site he had. Copyblogger. Is that still around?
It kind of, yeah. Brian has since sold the site, but it's still around and maybe starting to get a little bit of a resurgence now. It fell off its peak. When I left the company, it was getting, I think we got about 50 million page views 1 year. So that's a lot of traffic.
Yeah.
I think it's way below that now. But during its heyday, it was the site if you were interested in writing, copywriting, marketing, that kind of stuff. So I was an editor there, and I helped grow Copyblogger. I mean, literally made it worth millions of dollars more, I'm sure. I wasn't the only person there, but I was one of the main people there. There were a lot of talented people there at the time. And eventually, I kind of had this idea in my head, why am I making other people rich? I can be making myself rich. I can choose myself.
Good catchphrase.
Yeah. So I left and started my own thing and did exactly the same thing that I did for them, for myself. And that's where SmartBlogger came from.
Were they upset at you at first?
No, I was actually, it was a very mutual parting. The way it kind of all played out behind the scenes was I told the owner, listen, if I want to stay, I want stock. He thought about it for a while, gave it serious consideration, and said, John, I would love to have you stay with us, but I think it's time for you to go start your own thing. And I will support you in starting your own thing. So he actually even emailed all of the Copyblogger subscribers to let them know when I was starting my own site.
Oh, that's really nice of him.
Yeah, and charged me nothing for that. So I had a very supportive relationship with them. I'm very grateful for that opportunity. And that's another reason, by the way, people look at my career and they say, you took off like a rocket, you make all of this money now. Well, I went to work at Copyblogger, which at the time was the biggest writing website in the world. I managed 200 writers. Then I went from there to working for Neil Patel. Neil Patel paid me as a consultant to build his writing team for his startup at the time, Kissmetrics.
And that built up to be a valuable brand.
It did. I mean, he sold it for, I don't know how much, but I think it ended up, we were at over 1 million visitors a month. And I mean, it wasn't me. I just built the initial team. But after doing that, it kind of made me realize that I knew what I was doing and gave me the confidence. And also it gave me a lot of connections to people like Brian, to people like Neil. And so when I asked for support, they were more than happy to help out. And because of, number one, building skill, working for other people, and then number two, building those connections, when I went to launch my own thing, yeah, it took off like a rocket.
And so, again, if I'm a beginning writer and I just want to get started, I want to try writing some articles, make a little bit of money on the side. I contact an agency and they would try me out somehow on something, or like could I write about whatever I want, and what would happen?
So the agency is going to tell you that we have work available in these 5 subject areas. Pick one. Or they may look at your portfolio and want to pick one as well. It helps to have at least 1 or 2 writing samples. They don't have to be on like a big professional website. They can be a Google Doc. Okay. The agency doesn't care.
Should I write with a good style? Like what's the stylistic requirement? Do I need to be a good writer?
Yeah. So what they're looking for often surprises people. And this is where it's really helpful. And this is where Smart Blogger fits in. I mean, we sell courses to teach people how to do this. They're looking to see how well search engine optimized your article is. So being well written is sort of the foundational requirement, but then they're looking at your headlines, your subheads. Are you putting the keyword in the first 2 paragraphs? If they're really advanced, they may look at other articles ranking for that keyword and compare your outline to their outline and see how close they are.
It's a lot more organized than I thought it was. Like it's a lot more scientific.
It's scientific and it's fairly objective, and it's also fairly fast. So what surprises a lot of our students is, I mean, they reach out and they say, I'm John Morrow, I'd love to write for you. What that agency actually hears is, I'm a potential writer, I may or may not be good. So the first thing they're going to ask you is for your portfolio link for a writing sample. They send it over and they don't even remember your name and who you are until after they've read your sample. And once they've read your sample, someone who's done this a lot, like I have, I can tell within 10 seconds of looking at someone's writing sample whether or not they know what they're doing. So it's a
so you're looking at, again, things like the headline. Does it attract you? Are the important keywords closer to the top? What else are you looking for? Are you looking for storytelling?
Not for a content writer.
Really?
For a copywriter, yeah.
That's so interesting. I would think it was the other way around.
No, for content, well, here's the reason why. I mean, just the brutally honest reason why. Google doesn't care about stories.
Yeah.
What they do care about is time on page. Okay. So the other things I would look for are if they have embedded videos that shows they're thinking about time on page, or if they have examples to illustrate their concepts, which is a type of story, but it's, giving a 2 or 3 sentence example to illustrate some point that you're making. Having a lot of those types of examples tend to keep people on the page. So a sophisticated writer will actually be using those kinds of techniques to increase the to come on page as well. And a really good editor and strategist will actually look for the presence of those kinds of things.
Yeah, and I would say that, like you say, a good writer, even writing a book, thinks about those things. I don't want people to put the book down and start going, scrolling on TikTok, I want people to turn the next page on the book. So I'll leave, I tell people every page should have a cliffhanger, even like a mini cliffhanger in it, just to keep people going. Like, oh, here's an example I'm about to tell you, but then wait till you see later on this other, whatever it is. Oh my gosh, I love these clothes. Mizzen and Main. That's Mizzen and Main. It really is the most comfortable work clothes. Travel clothes. I had to travel this whole week. I'm traveling for a week and a half, and I just took Mizzen and Main clothes with me. Close out 2023 in style with comfortable, breathable, packable, and machine washable pieces from Mizzen and Main. As you wrap up your year-end goals, enjoy a Mizzen and Main dress shirt that you can wear confidently. I like that they've very, very just nice, solid colors. I don't really like to get all fancy in patterns and everything, although they do have some pattern shirts, but very comfortable clothes, stretchable pants. It's just super comfortable, but they look professional, and you can wear them casually or professionally. I like some of their flannel shirts or untuck shirts. I love untuck. I never tuck in. So again, whether you're shopping for a special someone or giving yourself the gift you really want, I just buy myself gifts. Mizzen and Main is the perfect gift for any guy who works, travels, and or cares about looking and feeling great. As you could tell by my many photos across the internet, I care about looking fantastic. I'm practically a model. And let's be honest, every guy loves to look great. So again, shop now at mizzenandmain.com and save 20% when you spend $130 or more using promo code James. That's promo code James at Mizzen and Main, Mizzen and Main.com. This is such a valuable service for all business owners, big businesses, small businesses, doesn't matter. I wish I had this in the many different businesses that I've started. Sometimes it seems like your business is humming, but then suddenly you don't understand it. You're starting to fall behind. You're not understanding where your costs are, where your revenues are, where your payments are. Teams are buried in all sorts of like BS work, and you can't seem to close the books. So you need like one dashboard, one source of truth. I'm jealous of this business, NetSuite from Oracle, of course, NetSuite by Oracle. I wish I'd come up with this idea. It's a brilliant concept to have all your business intelligence on one dashboard. This is why you need to know these three numbers: 37,000, 25, and 1. So 37,000, that's the number of businesses which have upgraded to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the number one cloud financial system, streamlining accounting, financial management, inventory, HR, and more. 25. NetSuite turns 25 this year. That's 25 years of helping businesses do more with less, close their books in days, not weeks, and drive down costs. 1, because your business is one of a kind. So you get a customized solution for all of your key performance indicators, your KPIs, in one efficient system with one source of truth. Manage risk, get reliable forecasts, and improve margins. Everything you need to grow all in one place. So right now, download NetSuite's popular KPI checklist designed to give you consistently excellent performance absolutely free at netsuite.com/James. That's netsuite.com/James to get your own KPI checklist. netsuite.com/James. Let's say for someone who's more a social media person and they write on LinkedIn or they write on Quora, or they write on Medium or their blog or whatever. What if they don't know all this and they simply want to use skills like these to increase their number of followers on Medium or Twitter or whatever? What techniques do you find kind of carry over to the social media influence space?
So the social media space is a little bit different. Search content is driven by how happy you make Google. social content is driven by engagement metrics only. So what I mean by engagement metrics only are the click-through rate on your tweet. If you're writing a Twitter thread, are they clicking the more link? Are they scrolling down on your Twitter thread? The same thing on YouTube. The click-through rate on your thumbnail image is a huge, huge factor. From there, the biggest factor is how much time are they spending on your content. Now, what's correlated the most in the social setting to, and this has been studied scientifically by people like Dr. Jonah Berger. He wrote a book called Contagious.
Oh yeah, he's been on the podcast.
Yeah. But the biggest driver, there are many, but the biggest driver is how much emotion do you make the person feel, which is why we see clickbait so often on social platforms. Is they're trying to get an emotional spike out of you, even when maybe it's not deserved. But creating those emotional spikes is what social is about, and then keeping the people watching and entertained as they consume your content. So the type of writer, here's what I've noticed about different types of writers. Copywriters actually typically do very well on social. Content writers typically do not do as well on social.
Because I would say because copywriters almost have, I don't want to say no shame, but copywriters are very good at saying, I lost 40 pounds just eating chocolate cake, and then this happened, and you have to click and engage.
And as a copywriter, what you learn, your skill set, is grabbing attention, keeping attention, building trust, keeping trust.
But I would think content writers would need the same. I mean, certainly storytellers need the same thing. And that's where I would think, content writers are trying to explain something. And I find story is often the bridge to get a story from one brain to another brain.
Yeah.
And so I would think content writers need to do that as well.
For really advanced terms. So one way to think about Google, and this doesn't occur to people, Google is actually, every search term is a fight to the death to see who can get to the top. Okay. And if you don't get to the top, you don't have a chance to grab the attention of that person. Now, for some terms, getting to the top is easy because you're facing a whole bunch of people who don't know what they're doing. And by the way, that's the majority of the content on the internet. Most of the time, a student who knows the things that I just talked about will wipe the floor with everyone else they're writing against because those people don't even know that much, right?
Like what's one technique that they might use? One trick?
Just for example, putting a percentage on their headline. It increases, that's a trick. It increases the number of people clicking on the article. Beginning with a number, that's why you see so many list headlines. So, and that's just the click-through rate. A trick for like the opening is to make a bold promise about exactly what the person is going to get from reading the article. You see that with YouTube videos too. They make a bold promise in the first few seconds.
Should you be, contradictory with public opinion? So I feel like a lot of people, I think sincerely, like the articles of mine that have done the best are when I would usually be angry at some aspect of public opinion and write an article expressing my view. And whether I intended it to or not, those would tend to get the most views, sometimes to my great detriment.
On social, any sort of contrarian articles are going to do really well. On search, Google actually punishes contrarians. It's not impossible, and that's why you tell me, like, I've never really paid that much, because the type of writer you are is much more geared towards social. People who are geared towards search are typically writing evergreen content that's going to be relevant for a decade. They're typically not responding to current events. And Google actually values people who follow with the herd. It's one of the things I dislike about Google is they punish contrarian opinions. So if you want to write an article with a completely different structure and with a completely different conclusion than the people already ranking for that term, it's actually harder for you to rank than if you just sort of parroted the same advice.
How does it know that I'm being contrary to the higher ranking articles?
Google is so incredibly smart. The only accurate way to describe it these days is AI. It understands exactly what every point you make is on an
That's
article.
fascinating. And again with social, let's say I'm thinking about social and I want an article to go viral or I want a tweet to go viral. You're saying it's the opposite? Like what so you're saying use a percentage, use numbers, have an emotionally compelling title. What other aspects might make a post, not necessarily on Twitter, but let's even say like Medium or LinkedIn
Yeah.
or Quora or whatever, like an actual post go viral?
So a story.
Mhm.
All of my articles that have gone viral. I mean, so my site Unstoppable, it got something like 1 million visitors the first week
Wow.
off of social. And it was all social, no search. And the reason why is that's a very emotional, story-driven post. And this was the other point I was going to make about search. Stories begin to matter. Like, let's say you have a checklist of 10 things to make an article rank. And let's say you have two different writers and they both know this checklist. Who's going to win at that point? Right? And that's where things like stories and actually being a good copywriter in addition to a good content writer begin to matter. So when you have really competitive terms, for example, if you wanted to rank for how to make money online, the article that would rank for that term or content marketing would have to be something to where you're doing more than just the things on the checklist. And so those writers, there aren't that many of them. I used to be one of them. So I used to be one of the people that companies would come to when they'd already done everything on the checklist. And they wanted someone to write something that ranked, and I could typically win. And because of that, just to write the article, they would pay me $5,000 to $10,000
Wow.
to write the article. And there are other writers now who are in that same category, where they only write about extremely competitive topics.
And what would be something that's not on the checklist?
Stories.
Story. So that's not easy, writing a good story. You have
It's
to know
not.
the components of a story and be good at it at spinning one.
Yeah, in general, there are 5 Ds. It's what we teach our students. So the first is depth. So you can go more in depth than anyone else. The second is drama. So that's stories. You create a dramatic. Speaking of drama in the terms of theater rather than conflict, right? So it's drama. Design is the third D. So you could have a really incredible page design. Could actually cause you to outrank your competitors just because there's something about this design on the page that's so compelling. The fourth is data. So you could present data and infographics in a really compelling, interesting way. You could have data that other people don't have. And then the fifth is distinctions. And distinctions are saying things that are genuinely new ideas, that are genuinely new types of thought leadership.
So what of those, I would say the hardest is probably the new ideas.
It is. And my prediction is in the world of AI, it's the only one that's going to have long-term value.
You're probably right because, for instance, I mean, at least right now, as a writer, how do I distinguish myself from an AI written post? Is my own personal stories. I can go out and experience something that's new and then write about it. So like I can go, let's say I was writing about dieting. In 1 year, I could try 52 different diets and write about what happened. AI is probably not going to be able to write an article like that anytime soon.
No, and I've experimented with this. So one of the things that I'm doing right now is actually preparing to launch an AI startup regarding writing, specifically email writing. is the area where we're focusing. And the big thing that you see is that anything that's experiential, AI does a really terrible job writing that kind of content. It's far worse than a human. And the reason why I think is, number one, AI doesn't have really any experience, but also there are different types of intelligence. The type of intelligence that AI has is taking and synthesizing and then regurgitating information. It's really, really good at that. It's not so good at things like empathy, emotion, genuine novel thought. And really, when you get deep into those, the writers who are going to be in trouble the fastest are the ones who are just learning, synthesizing, and regurgitating information.
Sort of like reporters. Like AI should write the New York Times soon, or any newspaper really. Like reporters, and I'm not criticizing reporters.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, because of the limitations on reporters, like there's a space limitation, there's content limitations, and so on, AI can usually fit within those limitations.
And AI will almost certainly, in very short order, within a matter of months, at that particular type of writing, do a better job than 99% of reporters.
Yeah, I believe that. I mean, I've been experimenting a little bit with, and this has just been a fun experiment. I've been having an AI write a book simply by me just guiding it, and then I'll ask it about something about neuroscience, and it'll spit out some chemicals, and I'll say, "Tell me the benefits of this one chemical you just mentioned," and then it'll write a whole thing. Tell me who benefited from using this chemical, and it struggles to think of examples, but it comes up with examples. So it's fascinating to use AI to write something, tens of thousands of words.
Here's what's really cool though, and here's what you're going to see in the future, I think. And it's one of the things I've been experimenting with is I tell it my story, and I write it out without worrying too much about the format or how compelling the story is. And then I tell it, turn that into a really compelling story.
And can AI do that yet or no?
Yes, it can.
Using ChatGPT or some other AI?
Yeah, using ChatGPT. Yeah.
Wow. So what do you think it does to make it more compelling at that point?
So the thing that works the best is to give it other examples of really compelling stories. Say, here are 3 examples of really compelling stories. Here's my story that I want to tell. Write a story in this style. If you do that, you typically get good results.
That's so interesting. So that potentially starts to get in the way of, like, I don't want to say literary writers, but like even fiction writers and so on.
Well, what I view it as, I think the future of AI is going to be, at least in terms of writing, I don't think it's going to replace all writers. I think it's going to replace the word processor. I think instead of going into Google Docs or Microsoft Word or wherever you're going, you're going to go to an AI prompt, and you're going to have a writing assistant who you will feed it your novel ideas, and it will express them in super interesting ways that you can then choose from to publish on the web.
That is so fascinating. And how does this get in the way of what you do? Like, you're training students to be good, both copywriters and search writers and content strategists and so on. But already there are AI tools to figure out the right content strategies and write these content briefs. How much further until you don't have students?
Yeah, we've spent a lot of time talking about this. The first answer is, starting this year, we're going to begin training our students on AI and how to use AI to supplement their work. That'll be the first step to help protect them in the future, because I believe that'll make their careers much longer. Over the long term, over the next 5, 10, 20 years, I mean, we're very early on. It's hard to make predictions on that long of a time scale. I think it's possible that we'll have bigger things to worry about than just AI replacing writers. I think it'll be replacing 95% of professions at that point.
And then what do you think will happen to the world?
It's the question of the ages, right?
Yeah.
What I
Like for
my
instance, take lawyers, right?
Yeah.
So there are lawyers who have made a living from simply responding to parking tickets for people,
Mhm,
and they
mhm.
charge, $100. They get people off of their $200 parking ticket, and
Yeah.
boom. But now AI is actually really good at that. Like AI knows the law better than the lawyers and can send the letters to the courts that are better than what the lawyers send. And so there are now like companies using that are, lawyers.ai. I don't know the names of some companies, but there are AI based companies that just do this for very cheap.
Any profession that relies on processing and regurgitating information is probably going to be eliminated, or at least you're going to start seeing the trend. I think this year you'll start seeing it.
Yeah. So again, like reporters and journalists, lawyers, maybe some types of doctors, like for instance, people who read x-rays or people who are just interpreting scientific data to make a diagnosis. Trying to think what else, what are other professions even?
Accountants.
Accountants, yeah.
I can't wait until they do that. It's so hard to find a good accountant. Even some types of engineering could potentially be replaced. It's already starting to write code. So anytime you have someone writing non-novel, you have a lot of developers in the world who make a living from taking components and smashing them all together and calling it code and selling it to a client, where that's what they do with their job. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. I'm not criticizing it. In the past, it's been an absolutely critical skill, but I think there's a very good chance AI will be able to do that particular thing better than humans pretty quickly.
It's going to be really interesting because I do think the human AI combinations, there's evidence to suggest that does better than AI or humans on their own. So hopefully most jobs will be like that it'll just be elevated so that, the best lawyers say we'll use AI, but AI won't replace them.
Yep.
And again, like I see evidence from like for the computer chess world, computers can beat humans now, 100 times out of 100 can beat the world champion of chess, but a human paired with a computer can outperform a computer.
Yeah, what I'm saying now, so I've probably spent, I don't know, 300 or 400 hours now with OpenAI. And the writing that I can generate, being a master writer, I can generate things that absolutely blow other people away. It's indistinguishable from what I would write myself.
What do you do with the AI to make it just simply over the top? Is it what you were saying earlier about, feed it some compelling stories and then say, make this story compelling like those?
So I'll give you a little hack
Mhm.
that you can try. The answer is there are a lot of things I do, but the one hack is I break down the components of what make good writing. So, for example, I won't just say write me an introduction about X topic. I'll say write me an X topic using the rhetorical devices of a Barack Obama speech.
You know what? I've done that as well. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I had this. I did this just yesterday. Actually, I said to ChatGPT, write me a speech about climate change in the style of Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, it used every professional speech writing technique.
Yeah.
And I could see, like, I could almost hear it in Martin Luther King's voice, like the speech that came out.
So so here's the thing. The average writer that is going to be using ChatGPT won't know to type in use rhetorical devices of it won't even occur to them to input those instructions. And you see the same types of things in the art-driven AI. So I've played around with DALL-E and a few of the others, and someone who's a professional artist or photographer, the prompts that they put in are way better than the prompts that I put in. And because of that, the results that they can generate are stunning. And so the way that I view it is, for the artist, for the photographer, the AI is a new form of paintbrush or lens. For a writer, it's a new form of word processor.
You're right, and it's like when the internet, was getting popular. Suddenly, everyone was a writer because you could just write on your own blog, and people thought they were good writers. But there was still a skill component that separated out the writers from the typewriters, and it's the same thing that's going to happen here. I think is that you still have to tell a story that is unique to you.
Yep.
And the AI won't be able to do that. Now, the AI will be able to simulate it pretty good when it sees a lot of your stories, but when you have a new thing to say, it's not going to be able to do that.
Yep. The other thing it can't do, just like I talked about, is the different forms of intelligence. So AI is really bad at empathy, is another thing that you find. Like if you ask it, what are the common fears of mothers with 3-year-old children? It's not very good at answering that type of question. It'll give you some things, but they're very surface level answers.
But I imagine it will get better at that.
It might. But so here's the thing that I've been doing that creates extraordinary results. I'll say the thought that keeps a mother awake at night is that someone will snatch their kid walking to school. That's what really makes them afraid. And so, therefore, I want you to use intense emotional language. I want you to write a story where a mother is the hero and to where she expresses her own internal dialogue to the reader. And to where she uses her experience as a mother to write a persuasive piece on the child safety. You do something like that, you're going to get way better results. Way better results.
So it still requires like a deep understanding of what it is you do, like whether you're a writer or a lawyer or a psychologist or whatever, and then you really use AI as a tool rather than kind of creating this generic AI mess.
Yeah, I don't think the generic AI stuff, for some things it's fine. If I want to learn how to cook rice, just go to ChatGPT, how do I cook rice? And it'll tell me. And I don't really need anything super interesting there. But for other topics that are not as pragmatic, I think that type of human perspective is still going to be really important to people.
I wonder if this would be a good augmented reality app that, let's say you're at a party and you're bad at small talk and you have the AI that's listening to all the conversations you're in, and it will suggest things occasionally. Oh, he just said this. Ask him. It sounds like there's a little bit more emotional content there. Ask him X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. It's a great idea. It'll be great at that type of thing. It'll be phenomenal at that type of thing. And it'll be fast. Now, you really get to interesting things imagine when OpenAI or whatever the AI is at that time is available on something like a neural link, like what Elon Musk is working at, where it's basically in your head all the time. And that's where you get to some future possibilities for mankind that are very, very different.
Do you think it'll be a better world or a worse world? Because I feel like, do we lose our humanity a little bit there? We're all basically just talking to everyone else's AI in their head.
I may regret saying this out loud, but if you ask the Neanderthal, is it a better world or a worse world? What do you think he would say?
Yeah, he probably would say it's a better world. Although I did read some science fiction books by, I think the guy's name was Robert Howard, where there was a Neanderthal living in modern day US, and it was a more environmental focused kind of book. So he was a little unhappy, but clearly we live in a better world now.
I think so. I think it'll be I think to me, it's an interesting question because on the one hand, it's clearly better in many ways. On the other hand, the Neanderthal may be like, well, all Neanderthals are extinct, so therefore it's a worse world. So, it depends on how you view it.
Well, one metric is the Steven Pinker metric of how much violence there is per capita. So 20% of Neanderthals died of violent wounds. Back in the day, and now it's 1,000% or something like that.
Tiny.
Yeah.
So I think from objective measures, the world is probably going to be a lot better. Now, is it, if you compare it to the nostalgia from our past on really maybe the times of our life where we remember fondly and we wish we could go back to, I think the answer is you probably won't get to go backward. And so savor the moments of your life that you have now, the experience that you have now, because like it or don't like it, what humanity is moving forward to is most likely going to be very, very different.
Well, John, words of the wise, and I hope people follow that. And John, what I want to take your writing courses now. Like, how do people find you? Like, it sounds like I feel like you gave us a lot of good information. You left some out. Where do people read the rest? Because I know there's a mountain of you send me emails every day, and I know there's a mountain of information here.
We do. The best thing to do is to go to smartblogger.com and just get on our email list and just read everything we have to say. And if you want to become a freelance writer, we can help you do it. You will be better prepared than anyone else for the future of AI. And the other cool thing that we do is we basically have onboarding programs at a lot of different agencies to where our graduates just kind of automatically go to the top of the pile at all the different agencies. So that just makes it a whole lot easier. So yeah, if you want to do that, go to smartblogger.com.
All right. And John Morrow, once again, thank you so much for coming on the show. I hope you have a lot of good luck going to Monterrey, Mexico, and getting all the healthcare that you need. And I look forward to having you on the show again. You're always welcome on the podcast. So when your email AI program comes out, let me know. We'll talk about that.
Awesome. I appreciate it. I love being here. Thanks for having me, James.
Thanks, John.
Your daily dose of gaming just got way more epic with the Snapdragon processor powering the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra. Snapdragon processors give you the premium mobile experience that triggers your inner champion. Whenever you want, wherever you want. Get ready for edge-of-your-seat performance, advanced customizations, ultra-realistic graphics, and adrenaline-boosting speeds that have the power to move you in more ways than one. Follow us on Instagram at Snapdragon Official.
Wounded Warrior Project helps post-9/11 veterans and their families realize what's possible. With support and resources that bring warriors together and empower them to become stronger, both inside and out.
It's possible to begin healing.
To get the help you need.
To find peace.
And as each warrior's needs evolve, so do we. Because these last 20 years are just the beginning. Learn more at woundedwarriorproject.org/together.